I've been working on both these Jeeps, doing little upgrades here and there, but this one made itself a priority when it stopped working. I bought it without a motor. I put a brand new clutch in the motor when I installed it, but it always was a lot heavier than I expected. So at first I suspected the linkage when something started sounding funky. This is the rod that actuates this bell crank, which pulls the clutch. Now, the way it's set up, it's got this bell crank almost flat. So when you're pulling on it that way, your lever arm is effectively really short. I made up another one with some rod ends I had lying around, and I'm going to shorten that up a bit till it's going more straight up and down. That made it better, but then it stopped working entirely. The clutch pedal dropped to the floor and you couldn't push it enough to release it. And it made a few kind of funny, horrible screeching noises that I knew it had to come apart. That transmission was coming out. I found out the issue with my throwout bearing. This is my throwout bearing. So is this piece, that piece, more throwout bearing, more throwout bearing. Seems to have gotten a little bit hot. I got myself a new bearing. I've been having good luck with national bearings lately, so it's a national bearing 1505. And figured I'd put it onto this piece, but it doesn't fit. Maybe this was actually made for an undersized bearing and the OD is bigger because the bearing wasn't very big. I don't know what the deal is. Either way, I've got choices to make here. I can either machine this down to fit this bearing. I also have, left over from my pile of Jeeps, another throwout bearing. I don't know where it came from, it was just in a pile. A little bit rusty, but it actually spins really nice. When you put pressure on that, it really rolls nicely. I could throw a used bearing in, but I don't know if I can quite bring myself to do that. I could pop off this bearing and put on the new one. I think I'm going to attempt to machine this down first, since this piece is useless anyway. And if that doesn't work, go to this one. Yeah, that should be a light press fit. Done. When I installed this clutch, I've done them before, they came up perfect. I didn't bother adjusting the fingers on this one. Now, when I put it in, it felt a little heavy, really actually pretty heavy. So I was hoping it would just break in. It got better, it never got the way I liked it. Now that I burned up the throwout bearing, I'm wondering if there's just too much pressure on those fingers. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust those fingers. There is a nut on a threaded, well, it's a bolt basically. It goes through, and as you turn that, it moves the positioning up and down on these fingers here. They're supposed to be from that surface to the tip of the finger 0.844 or 27 30 So somewhere I have calipers. Where did I put those? I had them here a minute ago. Oh, here they are. Alright, so go ahead and measure the finger. And I'm just going to use a depth setting. Alright, and I'm just going to push down with my hand so it'll ride as I adjust it. So right now we're at 940. So we can go ahead and take that in. I don't know if you can see it, but as I turn this nut, that distance is getting smaller and the nut stops. And we're at 900. Apparently on this clutch you can't actually adjust it to where it's supposed to be. Okay then. Plan B. This is plan B. I went digging in my old parts pile and found an extremely rusty and crusty pressure plate. This is an Auburn pressure plate. They had a couple different brands originally. I know Auburn was one of them. I think they started sometime in the late 40s. Anyway, this is an ancient pressure plate, but made back when craftsmanship was actually a good thing. So we're going to clean the rust off this and throw this one in. See how that goes. Let's go install it. Out with the new, in with the old. We're getting about 841, calling that close enough. One of the best feelings in the world when the splines finally line up. Just a little buildup. It's handy to have spare transmissions lying around who needed a gasket. In less time than a trip to the parts store, we got a gasket. And got a fancy new boot for the shifter. So I won't even get water in the oil anymore. Hopefully. That old rusty clutch worked great, but there's a few other things I wanted to do. I had bought one of the reproduction spare tire carriers for this Jeep because I needed to put a spare tire on it, and they were like 25 bucks. I figured, hey, that's a good idea. It's not a good idea. The reason is that it's on the passenger side, so you can't really see it, and I keep running into things. It sticks out further than anything else. So I've had this caught on a few tree branches, fence posts, things like that. So I don't like that. I'm going to get rid of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make something for the back here. Now this has a rear seat in place. It doesn't move. So this tailgate's virtually useless because you can't load anything. So I got rid of the chains. I'm going to actually bolt this tailgate right in as solid and make a spare tire carrier on the back. Maybe a fuel can carrier if I could fit it too. Because it won't hurt the functionality by not having a tailgate I can't use anyway. And it'll get rid of that thing sticking out the side. Okay, I got a cross piece attached. I basically took some square tubing, welded in some weld nuts on either end, so I had threads. And at least now the whole rear end's structural. It actually ties the sides of the bed together, and I've got something to work with that I can go downwards. Protective shield so I don't burn the seat. I'm planning ahead, so I'll light something else on fire down here. One thing I've learned on these Jeeps is I don't know how they started from the factory, but once they're this old, they're not symmetric anymore. Things have been bent, things are twisted, things do not fit the same way on either side. So this vertical brace here, bolted in perfectly, fit fine, a little clearance in the hinge, worked beautifully. Go to make the same thing on the other side, yeah, hits the hinge, nowhere near there. So I can't make it the same way over here. So I'm just gonna skip over that part for now and finish up the tire mount on this side and deal with this later. What I've got here is an old spare tire mount off one of those Suzuki stag kicks. It has the same bolt pattern, so it should work fine. So I'm gonna throw this on the tire here. Then going to put a straight edge. In this case, I'm using the 1x1 tubing, so I want a little clearance in case I go with a slightly wider tire. So I'm just going to lay this right across and mark it right where that intersects and slice off the extra bits. That way I know when I weld it on, I'm going to have that much clearance. Got the flanges cut off here, so I'm going to do a test fit. Yeah, it looks like the top of this mount is about the top here, so I think I'm going to go with that. That way I have plenty of clearance if I want to hook up a trailer or do something else down below. Now I've got to mount this other side of the tire mount. I see bolts right here that are real close. So I'm going to run this vertical piece down, tie into one of those holes with a spacer to keep it at the right distance, and weld it all in. Let's test this thing out. I like that. I'm happy with that tire mount. That thing is solid. I left a little room here to solve another problem I have, which is the fuel gauge doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is add a gas can. That way, if I run out of fuel, I have spare. Now I could fix the fuel gauge, but really having extra gas is handy, especially on a vehicle like this. I've had vapor lock twice now, and I end up taking off the fuel line and priming the car with some gas there. So if I have gas that's already spare, makes that easier. So I need a can here. I bought one. It was a little mini-sized jerry can. This is about a 2.5 gallon one. So I'm going to mount this little can up here. I should clear the light. It looks like I have room for everything, and have a little spare gas with me. So now I get to sort out that problem of how to handle this, but I'll incorporate the gas tank mount to it. So let's see what we can come up with. I found this is an old enclosure from a battery charger, and this kind of looks like it's starting a gas can mount anyway. So I'm just going to go with it. We'll see what we can do to modify this. I cut that battery charger housing, and I left the grate that was on the side. I'm going to put that on the bottom, because that way I figure it won't trap water. Anything will just drain right out. We'll pop this right here, something like that. I'm going to take the edge here, this lip I'm going to fold over, or put on top of my square tubing here. And then going to take this edge, fold it up. I want to leave a little bit of a lip, but not all this. So I'm going to cut off some, and let's see. Here's a convenient measuring tool. We'll leave a 1-inch lip. That's perfect. So we line that up, and then we bend it somewhere around there, and we should have a little lip for this to sit in. That's looking pretty good. So one more cut, one bend, then we got to make a framework that keeps it from being floppy. That should do there. And then a little bit of a lip here. This is where I'm going to catch the square tubing. Alright, that top lip hangs right there. That should sit right about there. Alright, so can goes in like this. Top lip up there. Something along those lines. That should do pretty well. I still have the issue of the hole and the hole not fitting the hinge part. So I bent up a piece with a little zigzag in it, popped a hole in the end of it, and we're going to bolt that right here. And then I'm going to attach the framework to that. And that gives me plenty of clearance to the hinge, and actually gives me a little more support on this gas can. So we'll bolt that in, start tacking things together here. That looks pretty good, as long as it doesn't move while I weld it. I'm gonna put the gas can on and see how it fits. Now it's a little cooler. I like that. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll just do a strap from here through the handles down to one of these, and should be all set. Now I'm going to pop all these bolts out, take the whole thing off, finish welding it, probably throw a coat of paint on it, and this should be good. I'll figure out a strap system that bolts on afterwards so I can change it if needed. And this is the back side. These are the braces I tacked in. I just tacked that to the bottom. I got a piece cut here. So now I'm going to weld that in, and that'll be tied to this piece. This all ties to the frame through that one. So this whole thing should be really rigid. So just a bunch of welding now. That should be plenty sturdy. I got it painted. In case you're wondering, this is Rust-Oleum Gloss Canvas White, which matches the body color really nicely. I have a couple more details I don't really need to get done, but they've been kind of bothering me, so I'm going to take care of them. One, this temperature gauge has been strung on the outside of the vehicle. Now that came with the motor when I bought it, so I just threw it on and put it together. But this has a gauge in it, so I'm going to go ahead and change out the sensor and put in the actual proper sensor to hook to the factory wiring and see if I can get that real gauge going and get rid of this tripping hazard for the passenger. That is in there. Maybe I'll try doing that one. Oxygen sensor socket. See if that works. Get this more room here. Yep, that fits. That is really in there. Okay, new plan. We leave that in. Let's just bolt this back on. What I meant to say was I just need to reroute this little capillary tube so that it can be somewhere else that's not a tripping hazard and still keep the gauge, because I really like that. I managed to get the gauge through. I had to take off this transmission plate. Took a lot of shoving, and quite honestly, this will not work on a regular Jeep. This floor actually has a crack in it. I was able to push some of it aside in order to shove that through. So this is a really bad idea. Try to take off the actual sender, because that's the smart thing to do. Anyway, I didn't do the smart thing, so now I can't actually put this in any kind of gauge mount because I can't disconnect this. So what I found, some perforated steel, and it happens to have the right spacing so I can mount this gauge. And I have a couple tabs here from something, and I'm going to go ahead and bolt this onto those tabs. Probably bend it a little bit like that, and that way the gauge will be mounted directly below the speedometer, and then tuck the cable out of the way. So that should be perfect. Got some little dashboardy looking screws. They're actually 1/4-20s, so we can pop that there. There, all done, just like factory. This shackle has been bothering me, because notice how it's straight out. That should be more in like the pointing up and down position, like, you know, the one on the other side. So something's wrong with the spring. Either it's broken and collapsed, or it's the wrong spring, because it does look a little different than the one on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and change that spring out and see if I can get a little more suspension movement, because right now this thing just pretty much binds up. Now I've got the tire off the ground, and this is still pointed forward quite a bit. Really, this should be vertical. So I think that's the wrong spring. So we'll fix that. That's the right way to do it. we go. Now for the spring. That one is my old spring. This one is a pair I had lying around. They came off a CJ-3A, but I don't know if they're original to it. Now, I've lined up this end, and this has the nice military wrap end. That's always good, where you have the extra leaf wrapped around. And you go over here, and there's actually a difference. Not too big, but there is a bit of a difference between that bottom one. And I think that is why the shackle was going like this. So I'm going to install this and see how it looks. Need to steal the bushing for that other one. There we go. Perfect. Let's make sure it fits things. There we go. And, yep, got our spring ready to install. Now I've got the back of the spring mounted. I have to do something with the shackle. This is the bolt that goes through it. This is the hole it goes in. Now they make a bushing that fits that you press in. It's a rubber bushing with an inner and outer metal sleeve. I don't have one, and no one local has one. So I'm going to see what happens if I use a piece of PVC and slide that in there. If nothing else, this will keep my spring from being damaged until I can get the right part. But that'll get me driving today. After some precision machining with the Sawzall, it's ready to go. Perfect. Now it's always a good idea to use new U-bolts when you do this kind of thing, because they're the one thing that attaches your whole axle to your vehicle. I, of course, am going to reuse the old ones because I have them already, and then I don't have to buy new ones. Now after I drive for a while, I'll come back and retorque these because they might move just a little and want to make sure they stay tight. I'm actually going to use a real cotter pin instead of a nail here because we're getting really fancy. Perfect. Now that is a much more reasonable angle. It actually moves. So here's the tire carrier, painted up, reinstalled. I think it matches pretty decent. Now, I've got to come up with a way to hold this can in. I went digging through my pile of stuff, and I found an old footman's loop, a broken tie-down, and a tie-down missing the strap. So this is going to make our hold down. Loop. Slide this through here, and that's going to go in here. There. That is solid. That's not going anywhere. At this point, I've taken care of all the little things that bothered me on this Jeep, and I think it's pretty much done. So let's take it out and see how it works. got a little bit of vapor lock. Luckily, I got spare gas in a can, so I'm just going to dump a little down the carb and get her going again. There we go. Let's see what happens. Now, if I had fixed my gas gauge, I couldn't have done that easy. So that's it. I'm calling this Jeep done. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But if it were perfect, I wouldn't have it out here on top of a hill, plowing through rocks and brush, and having a good old time. So I think it's good. I could turn the key, I could drive through town, the lights work, the brakes work, it's safe. And out here, it just keeps chugging along till it vapor locks. But then you just pop the hood, take a rest, and enjoy the view. Pour a little gas in the carb from the handy can in the back, and there you go. You keep driving along. It suits my needs, and I'm real happy with it. So now that this is finished, I get to move on to another project and see what's coming next. Until then, keep having fun. Well, the video's done, as you can see. If you're here, you've already watched it. But as I was about to upload it, these showed up in the mail. This is the bushing I'm supposed to use in that spring. Now, I drove for hours and hours on that PVC, most of it off-road. So let's see how that looks. Huh. Quite honestly, not as bad as I expected. You can tell it's definitely wearing, but obviously it's kept its shape, and it was still protecting everything and keeping anything from rubbing too hard. So, good temporary solution. Now, let's get these things in there. Alright, got a piece of threaded rod here, washer on either side. We're just going to pull this in. There we go. That's in. Though, now that I have this off, I'm looking at the upper one. That's pretty bad. Might do that one too while I'm here. I ordered extras. You can see how worn the rubber is. The inner sleeve actually came off with a bolt. I really should replace this. I'm trying to slice it and let it collapse. Well, we got two bushings in. Got our bushings in place. Now I'm just going to put this on loosely for now. There we go. Bounce a little. Well, that's it. For real this time. All I've got left to do is clean up a few tools, and maybe I'll do a little more testing. That sounds like fun. So we'll see you next time.